the central bank is influencing the financial system. They influence who can get loans and who doesn't. Because they also regulate the banking system, they've been encouraged by some politicians to allow some banks to not lend to certain industries or certain companies. And this is only getting stronger, especially when we're having them to be pushed to consider regulation of fossil fuel industries. In the past, they've been pushed to regulate tobacco and firearms and marijuana and cryptocurrency and a variety of other industries that are totally legal, but for some reason disliked by certain politicians or powerful interest groups. And so it seems dangerous to have the same group that's supposed to be looking out for everyone in the economy also picking certain groups as winners and others as losers. So that does seem like something dangerous, that we're giving this agency more and more power, and yet at the same time making them more and more political so that they're responding to political incentives and not what is best for Americans.
A defining feature of CBDCs is that it's programmable digital money. This would give a central bank the ability to manipulate people's private funds. They could potentially decide what you can spend your money on and how much you can spend. They could create new money, freeze money, expire money, or even delete your money for economic or political purposes.
But the concern is the surveillance state. And while geolocation can do that, there's a reason they say just follow the money for a reason. So we've made cash almost impossible to use. And I think that hurts the unbanked and underbanked most. Lastly, I'll say, if you turn the central bank digital currency into this creepy surveillance tool and don't preserve the permissionless characteristics of it, it's going to hurt. It literally is what China is developing, and we shouldn't imitate them. We should protect America's way of life.
My question is what problem we're trying to solve for. And I've not gotten a clear answer on this. For most consumers, payments are digital. The movement of cash between banks is digital. We see in the private sector the payment system working well. We see the Fed Now system is expected to go live in 2023. And so what are the differences here from all those alternatives, and why the Fed would need to have a CBDC?
Yeah, so 3 reasons that I cited earlier. Declining use of cash, so potentially consumers no longer having direct access to a safe central bank issued digital currency. That is one significant risk. Second significant risk is that stable coins become the dominant form of US digital dollar. And in that world, you could have fragmentation of the payment system, instability of those digital currencies, the kind of instability that Congress chose to move away from 100 years ago.
It's unusual that we have a central bank and that economists are so in favor of having the government have a monopoly on the money supply, when every other industry we would say you should never have a monopoly because they'll abuse their ability to raise prices or be harmful to consumers. But for some reason, economists are okay having a monopoly on the money supply that the government manages. And so it's a little bit of a mystery why they would think that the government would be good at that, presumably because the economists themselves think they will be in charge of it and that they'll do a good job. But there are a lot of reasons to think that a centralized monetary authority would not be as good and hasn't been as good historically as a decentralized system of private banks or another agency producing the money. So if you have only one provider of the money supply, they can only look at everything that's happening in the economy all at once. They have just very aggregate numbers that don't really give them a good idea about what's happening on the ground, what individuals want, whether people want more money or less money. Compare that with individual banks that are dealing with their customers every day and have a constant feedback about supply and demand. How much money do people need? How many loans do people need? Banks have to respond to that kind of demand, whereas one centralized agency doesn't have the information necessary to produce the right amount of money, and they don't have the incentives to, because they don't have to satisfy their customers, because the government can do whatever it wants, even if it's something that is not good for average Americans.
Yeah. Okay. One big responsibility for all of us is to actually explain to people what is what. What is central bank digital currency? What is stable coin? What is the differentiation between real stable coins and non-stable stable coins? And what is crypto? We haven't done our job. When we look at stable coins, this is the area where the big mess happened. If a stable coin is backed with assets 1-to-1, it is stable. When it is not backed with assets, but it is promised to deliver 20% return, it's a pyramid. What happens to pyramids? Eventually, they fall to pieces. And that is where regulation, Christine is talking about this segment, but regulating the stable coins, ensuring interoperability of CBDCs, and recognizing that Bitcoin may be called coin, but it's not money. All of this we need to work on.
With existing technologies that can already fix the problems that CBDC enthusiasts claim they can better solve with their government-backed, centralized, programmable money, we may want to ask ourselves, why do they want them so badly?
It brings another aspect of digitalization, which is digital ID. I personally am a big believer we need that. If the world is going to be digital, we have to accept that we have that digital identity, but it does bring lots of problems around privacy and human rights. And let me say, as somebody who grew up in a communist society, that does make me take a pause. How to make sure that the world is inclusive, democratic, that we push back on criminal activities, and at the same time, there is traceability of actions. So digital money don't end up being just another way to have a suitcase with cash to pay for criminal activity.
A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that.
We've already seen Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau using regulatory power and political will to freeze the bank accounts of ordinary citizens involved in peaceful protests.
I vote for the motion.
Mr. Trudeau, for.
CBDCs take this much further. They could grant the highest level of governing authorities unprecedented absolute power, surveillance, and control.